Hi, I'm here today with Director Don Hall of the Medway Drug Enforcement Agency, and we're going to be talking today, Don, about methamphetamine. We get a lot of questions come in on our Facebook page and actually by phone calls, and I know you do as well, as what is methamphetamine, how can people be alert, how they can actually be helpful in detecting people that may be manufacturing methamphetamine in their own neighborhoods. But first of all, tell us a little bit about Medway for the people that are not aware of what Medway may be.
Medway is a multi-jurisdictional drug task force. Been around for many years. We're one of the oldest drug forces, task forces in the state of Ohio. We work on a covert basis with the use of undercover agents and confidential informants.
Okay, very good. Now, as I stated, we were going to talk about methamphetamine. First of all, what is meth? For the people that may not be aware, they just hear that phrase, they see it in the newspaper. What exactly is this drug and how does it affect the human body?
Methamphetamine is a central nervous stimulant. To break it down and keep it simplest form, you ingest it, it's going to stimulate your senses, your nervous system, keep you up for days on end, hours, days.
And if people were to use the word speed, you know, going back maybe to the 70s, would methamphetamine fall into that category?
Yes, sir.
And in our area here in Wayne County, Ohio, how are you normally seeing people actually use meth? How are they ingesting it?
Typically they will smoke it. Sometimes we will see injecting it, but typically it's smoked. It can be taken various amounts of ways, smoking, ingesting it, the smoke, shooting up with a syringe, and also just ingesting the powder, like snorting it through your nose.
Are there any visible signs that a person may be involved in using methamphetamine?
Typical signs that we see on a street level basis is the paranoia associated with somebody that's under the influence of methamphetamine, the dilated pupils, where somebody using another type of drug such as heroin, you'll see the pupils will be restricted. When they're under the influence of methamphetamine, usually the pupils are fully dilated. And the sores on the face or the body, typically referred to as meth bugs. They're not actually bugs, it's just it's a sensation that they get when they're using methamphetamine, that something's either crawling on or underneath their skin, and they incessantly pick and scratch until they develop sores on their face and other parts of their body. And also meth mouth. Meth inhibits your ability to produce saliva in your mouth, which you need to fight bacteria in your mouth. Also makes you crave sweets, and a lot of the chemicals associated in the process of manufacturing methamphetamine are not ones that should be used or consumed in the human body.
Okay. Now, methamphetamine is not a new drug. It's been around for many years.
Right.
But the method for manufacturing methamphetamine has changed over time. And we hear the phrase one-pot cook used often, and I know myself that is a method that's used quite frequently here in our area. Explain to folks exactly what that process amounts to.
The one pot or the shake and bake that you hear so much about on the news has taken over, and 90% of the meth labs across the United States of America are the one pot or the shake and bake method. Years ago, the preferred method was the anhydrous ammonia, where they would steal anhydrous ammonia out of the nurse tanks out in farmers' fields, or the red phosphorus or red P method. That is a four-step process. It takes a lot more time to produce or manufacture methamphetamine, where the one pot somebody can manufacture within 45 to 60 minutes typically and have a finished product of methamphetamine, and that's referred to as a two-step process. A lot easier to do. The yields aren't going to be as large as it would in the anhydrous or the red P typically, but something that anyone could go to a local retail outlet and purchase all the chemicals that are needed to make methamphetamine and manufacture it. Can be bought at the local retailers.
I think that's one of the things that's unique about methamphetamine is, unlike some other drugs that are oftentimes imported from other countries, methamphetamine is a synthetic drug that is made from common chemicals that are available, like you said, at any hardware store. or drugstore, convenience store, big box stores, things of this nature. So the person does not have to import raw product from Cambodia or someplace like this. They can obtain the chemicals, the raw chemicals, and combine them. So let's talk about the chemicals that they would be needing, because I think that's helpful for people to realize that if you see someone in possession of all of these chemicals together, obviously all of these chemicals, one by themselves, are illegal to possess. But when you see folks in possession of all of these chemicals at one time, it's certainly a sign of possible meth production.
Correct. Typically, the number one precursor chemical that you need is ephedrine or pseudoephedrine that can be bought at a retail store. There are things in place to prevent the excessive purchases of pseudo. That's why there's state law in Ohio that you produce identification, and then it goes to a national database to track the amount of grams somebody purchases on a monthly basis.
And when you talk about pseudoephedrine, it's actually cold medicine that people would take if they're congested.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a legitimate product that when somebody has a cold or a sickness, they can use to
So the person that is just going in to buy a box of Sudafed because they've got a cold, that's not the person you're looking for.
Correct.
Because people can legally possess that, but it is monitored, and when you see excessive uses, that's certainly a clue to law enforcement that there could be a problem.
Correct.
But they take the Sudafed and do other things with it, and talk about that with it.
Well, that's the number one precursor chemical they need to manufacture methamphetamine. What they're going to do with it is take that and buy additional chemicals, usually from a lot of times from the same store, and combine those chemicals in a cooking process and manufacture their own methamphetamine. It's a liquid form, then they change it into a powder form.
And I think sometimes the phrase cooking process throws people a little bit off track, because it's not like they're taking it home and putting it on the stove and baking it for half an hour. There's actually a chemical reaction that
Correct.
is involved.
There's specific measurements that you need to manufacture it, but typically it's going to be cooked or manufactured right here in a bottle just like this. Typically a 2-liter bottle is what we typically see here in Wayne County.
Okay. And for the folks that maybe get a little confused about the terms, when we talk about a meth lab, this is it.
Yeah.
It's not a sterile environment in a scientific laboratory. It's in somebody's garage, it's in the trunk of their car, it's in a ditch. Right. It can be just about any place, because this right here would be what the meth lab looks like.
Right. When you say meth lab, don't think of beakers, condensers, all this professional glassware. A meth lab is going to be something, again, a backpack, book bag, anywhere and everywhere you think meth could be made is pretty much where I've done meth labs. Hotel rooms, campers, tents in the woods, vehicles, homes, mobile homes. Very easy to do, but meth lab is usually bottled like this, or numerous bottles, multiple bottles, along with usually a lot of these chemicals you see on the table. I don't have everything here, but just kind of gives you an idea of what is needed to manufacture the methamphetamine.
And I think people have seen in the news or on television pictures where law enforcement officers are suited up in essentially hazmat suits, wearing respirators, and going in and taking care of this. What's the big deal? Why is that environment dangerous to the people that not only respond but are actually manufacturing the meth or nearby?
Well, it's a very usually toxic or flammable environment. You need lots of flammable solvent or flammable fuel to manufacture the methamphetamine. And other chemicals like something like this, something like lye, where it has a skull and crossbones on it, it's very corrosive. Ammonium nitrate, which is an oxidizer, and lithium, which does not like water. It's also added into this cooking process, and all these chemicals are combined into one single vessel or bottle, and a lot of them are incompatible. They don't like each other, and but they're all needed to do this cooking process to convert the pseudoephedrine into a.
And you use the phrase lithium, and I'm familiar somewhat with the process. they're going to take lithium batteries. I mean, the typical batteries that a person would buy for a camera or a CD player or something like this, and they peel those down, and there's a lot of trash that is a result of this process, and that trash is toxic, correct?
A lot of times it is. Something like this is a toxic sludge bottle. It's still flammable, still corrosive, a lot of chemicals that are left over in the bottle. We had one of these bottles, just the sludge bottle alone, explode on an agent, and that's because all this solid you see here saturated with fuel is still highly flammable. And
when you talk about these bottles exploding, it's not necessarily because it's an explosive compound, but it's because of the reaction. Talk about why the bottle would explode.
Typically, it's going to explode because the lithium makes contact with the very thin milled plastic that this is. This was not designed to manufacture meth, obviously, but typically the lithium will make contact with the water and it'll burn a hole through the bottle, and it could create an explosion, or it just could create flame shooting out of the bottle.
So when people see that a house caught on fire and officials suspect that the occupants were manufacturing meth, that's pretty much what happens. The process gets out of control.
Yeah, the bottle fails on them, and they have some type of explosion or fire. You're also in an environment where a lot of times there's so much Coleman fuel or a flammable solvent used, has a very good, leaves a good vapor trail, very good flash point, so it's easy to ignite secondary explosions from the saturation, the gas levels that could be in the air of a very closed or confined space, whether it's an apartment or a car or camper.
So if a person feels that their neighbor or somebody in the nearby area is manufacturing meth, what types of things should they be looking for, perhaps smelling for? What are the clues that they should be looking for? And of course, the end result would be to contact law enforcement. What is it they're going to probably be noticing?
You see, like I said, I get back to the paranoid thing where they might have the shades or curtains drawn at all hours, 24/7. No trespassing signs. You don't see them out very much. A lot of activity going at all hours. Cars coming and going. They might not put their trash out. They might save their trash, put it in the garage or stockpile it, take their trash across the street to somebody else's pile of trash. Just odd behavior like that is something to be watchful of. And just trash being left, whether it's on the roadside ditch or maybe they do take their trash out, and you see a bottle like this in the trash bag that is broken open or something like that, where this isn't something typically you see, a small pop bottle like that with vinyl tubing running from it.
Right. When we find these types of things laying alongside the road, we want to encourage people not to pick them up, not to shake them and examine them, but to contact law enforcement. And we oftentimes contact the folks at Medway because you are the experts at disposing of meth trash. And speaking about disposal of this, what is the process? So when you come in and you clean up a meth lab, obviously there's material that you have to keep for evidence for the prosecution side of things, but what do you do with it? You just can't throw it in the trash can out behind your office. What's the procedure there?
First is assessing the environment that you're in, whether it's air samples, just going through everything, photographing or video taping everything, and trying to sort through everything, what you got. A lot of times you'll have containers like this where you don't know whether it's water, gas, some type of acid. So we do testing. We use pH paper to tell us what the pH level is of a particular product, so we can ascertain, is this just tap water, or is this maybe Coleman fuel or something else? So we'll do pH testing. We'll take samples of stuff that we believe is chemical in nature or flammable in nature, whether it's an acid or a base. Take those samples and send them to the State Fire Marshal's office. And other chemicals such as pseudoephedrine and Coleman fuel that might contain methamphetamine, we'll send that to the BCI lab to have it examined for the presence of methamphetamine.
So you've actually had cases where it looks like it's a simple container of Coleman fuel, but when it's actually examined, suspended in that fuel is methamphetamine, and sometimes large amounts of it.
Correct.
Now, what does methamphetamine sell for? What's the average prices that you're seeing here?
Typically $100 a gram, which if you can picture in your mind a sugar packet at your local restaurant, small sugar pack, that's typically what a gram amount is.
And the person that would purchase a gram of meth, how many uses would they get out of that? Would they use that all at one time, or would they divide it up?
They could, but that'd be a very large amount. It all depends from person to person,
Okay.
and their tolerance level at the specific amount. It differs from person to person. But a gram amount for somebody that doesn't use, again, all the time, it can differ.
Okay, so it's a profitable thing. When you take the chemicals and mix it together, you could end up with a large amount of product that, of course, you're going to be selling on the street,
Right.
for large amounts of money.
Depending on the number of boxes being used, the cook and his experience level, it all depends. A good cook may get 3-4 grams out of a bottle, which is really good. So, $300-400, in an hour's time is good money.
Sure.
And, typically $45-50 startup costs when you buy all the chemicals and components needed to manufacture it. A very small price and a very good profit.
So for a $50 startup cost, they could clear $250.
Yeah, $350 easily.
Sure.
For a good cook.
Okay, so for those who may feel that someone in the neighborhood is in the process of manufacturing methamphetamine, or may have any type of drug intel at all, we're going to put the contact information here at the bottom of the screen, and you can see it there. And don't hesitate. Information is kept confidential, whether it comes to the sheriff's office, whether it comes to Medway, or any of the other law enforcement agencies throughout Wayne County. We all work closely with Medway. They're the specialists when it comes to drug enforcement, and they do a fantastic job with that. And we're proud to have Don as the leader of the group there, and he's done a fantastic job throughout his career. So till next time, stay safe.